Okay, it is 6:30 p.m. I am Colleen Norton, Littleton City Clerk. I'm going to call this meeting of the Transportation and Mobility Board to order. On our agenda, we have a council liaison address. Robert Reichert is not with us tonight, so I'm sure he will come in and chat with you at your next meeting. I'm going to go over, for most of you, this will be a refresher, training about open meetings law, CORA, your role, things like that. This will be new for Josh. Once we're through training, we'll have an opportunity to do some member introductions, get to know each other a little bit. Those of you who already know each other can introduce yourselves to Josh, and then we will do nominations for an election of a new chair and vice chair. As we move through this training, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them as we go through it, or save them till the end, whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay. So this board is an advisory board to council. It was constituted by council for a specific purpose. As your name indicates, transportation and mobility throughout the city. We also have quasi-judicial boards that act in a different capacity, actually approving applications, hearing potential grievances, or asking for variances, things like that. This board is a little less structured than those boards. So the role of city council, they are our legislative body. They are the ones who set policy. They enact ordinances that affect our city code, which is our local laws that are different than those of the state. They appoint members to our various boards, commissions, committees, and y'all have been through that process. The application process, 3 nights of interviews, deliberations, appointment, and then this super fun training. And then they will provide focused attention, kind of what they want to get from each board. They will let you know what their ask is of you, and they will do that through your staff liaisons. We are a home rule city, so we do operate under our home rule charter and our city code. We can adopt laws that are more strict than state laws, but not more lenient than the state. And we've done that in a few areas in our code, but not many. So council adopted Horizon 2027, their strategic plan, and these were their 5 outcome indicators that they really wanted to focus on, which is vibrant community with a rich culture, sustainable community with natural beauty, robust and resilient economy, safe community, and high quality governance. All of our boards touch on these to some extent. And I'm sure that, Shane, do you want to offer anything about where TMB falls primarily here?
Yeah, so there's some of the strategic outcomes that council has adopted are related to transportation. So I don't know that we've covered them much in here, but staff has kind of been working with them. And that's something we can touch on at a future meeting, but it's things like, you know, how do we make sure that we're getting good bike and ped infrastructure, right? How do we collect data to make sure that we're actually having an impact on traffic safety and connectivity, things like that. So some of the things council has wanted, we already have the tools and the processes in place to be able to respond to that. Some of them we said, hey, this is a really good goal, but we need a couple of years to, you know, be able to do deeper analysis to actually react to this. So.
Okay. Guiding documents for any of our boards and commissions are going to be that Littleton Horizon 2027. These documents are available on the website. Our comprehensive plan, the Authority Board and Commission Handbook. Most of you got that emailed to you. Josh, did you get a copy?
I will check.
If not, I'll get you.
Okay, thank you.
Robert's Rules of Orders, that actually has more to do with our quasi judicial boards where we're actually making motions, taking votes, tabling items, continuing them, things like that. You won't do much of that in an advisory capacity. And then council's legislative rules, their standards of conduct and protocol and rules of engagement. Those are all available on council's page on the website. All of our boards and commissions follow council. So whatever protocols council has adopted for themselves, they expect their boards to engage in the same way. Okay. So I'll go back because I skipped one. Role of staff. So your department staff, which would be for this board, Shane and Kenna primarily. However, you will work with other members of Public Works, Aaron, Tim, and potentially others. And so role of staff really is to kind of help guide the board. They're responsible for making sure that you have a place to conduct your meetings, that meetings get recorded, that agendas are put together. They will generally work. Well, I don't want to speak for Shane and Kenna, but most staff liaisons will work with their board chairs and vice chairs to create agendas for the coming months versus working with the entire board. But if there are things that board members would like to see, then that's something you can address through your staff liaisons. Okay, the city clerk's office. So our role really is just to make sure that we are meeting all statutory requirements in regards to making sure that we're posting public meetings in a timely fashion, that we're posting meeting documents when available prior to the meeting. At the very least, we have an agenda that we have to post a minimum of 24 hours prior to a meeting. If there are any special meetings during the year, there's usually at least one kind of field trip that this board does. They do a little bus tour. And so we actually post that as a public meeting as well. Anytime this board is convened, it has to be open to the public. Plain and simple, no ifs, ands, or buts. This board does not have an option for executive sessions, which can be held out of view of the public.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
All right, so public, available to the public. Does that mean it needs to be in a public space, or could we theoretically have a meeting in a business?
Mm-hmm.
As long as
the
the public is allowed to attend?
Correct. And so a good example of that is with city council, when they do their council retreat annually, it's generally held in a hotel or something like that. But public are more than welcome to attend and be there with us. Again, anytime any body of the municipality, regardless of their role, whether they're advisory, quasi-judicial, or council, 3 or more members, that's a meeting. And it's got to be open to the public. We have to make it available to them. Okay. Yeah. And then city attorney will provide legal advice when and if needed. And that will be through your staff liaisons as well. Your board chair, again, they're going to lead the meeting. They're going to call it to order. They're going to make sure folks that are supposed to be here are here. Anytime a board member isn't going to be able to attend, we ask that they notify the board chair and staff liaison, just so that we know, you know, if only 2 people are going to make it, really worth having a meeting, right? I don't think you really have that problem with this board, which is awesome. Vice chair steps in if the chair is not going to be able to attend. Now it's the runner-up in Miss America. If they can't fulfill their duties, there you go. And if you have kind of breakout subcommittees, which can't be more than 2 people, the vice chair may step in to a leadership role there to assist the chair and staff. Okay. And then again, just communicate with your staff liaisons. If you miss a meeting, take time to watch the video now that we're recording all of the advisory board meetings. Make sure that you're up to speed with anything that you may have missed. So that when you get here, because you guys have a lot of work to get through this year. And it's going to be crunch time. Derek was here doing homework before 6 o'clock tonight, so.
Teacher's pet.
Okay, Colorado Sunshine Law and Open Meetings Law. Again, any meeting of a quorum of 3 or more members of any local public body, whichever is fewer. So for most of our boards, there's 7 members. 3 is going to be it. So more than 3 people, it's a meeting if you're discussing public business. Littleton, in a medium-sized city, it's a small town. You may run into each other in what I like to call out in the wild. You know, and if you happen to meet up and you're having a conversation and there's 3 of you, is that a meeting? No, as long as you're not discussing city business. So, and remember, again, small town. So if you run into each other out in the wild, the public's going to run into you too, and they'll know if you're out there talking about business that should be conducted in this room. So while you may run into each other at a restaurant, one of the new breweries, walking on the trail, whatever it is, just be mindful of what you can discuss outside this room. Be mindful of emails. So you should always be using your city issue email for anything that has to do with this body or business of this body. When we send out meeting packets, we do send it to the whole board, but we do it as a one copy. So that if one of you were to accidentally hit reply all, the only people you're replying to are staff. You're not going to be replying to the rest of the board. Because if you send an email and hit reply all and have all 7 members, you have just created an ad hoc electronic meeting. And we're now in violation of the open meetings law. Isn't it fun? I get to say don't do stuff a lot. I'm the lady that says no all the time. If Shane and Ken are reaching out to you guys via email saying, hey, we're trying to schedule this offsite, you know, the magical mystery bus tour, right? Whatever it is. And it's just trying to get scheduling and you accidentally do a reply all and everybody's there. Is that a violation? No, because you're just trying to get schedules, right? Who's available this day, that day kind of thing. And just, again, caution against reply alls and be very careful on your social media. Just because, you know, we tend to, or we can tend to, I don't want to speak for everyone, bring our work into our social media sometimes. And you have to be careful about that. Because if you make a comment and a member of the board who you happen to be friends with on social media makes a comment and somebody else makes a comment, guess what? We now have an electronic meeting. So back to this, full and timely notice to the public, a minimum of 24 hours ahead of time. Our rule of thumb is we generally try to post agendas the Thursday or Friday before the meeting the following week. It's kind of become our standard. I think our citizens have come to expect that they can look on the website on Thursday or at latest sometime Friday and see that there's a meeting happening the following week, whether that meeting is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They can look at the agenda. You'll see we have engaged citizens here who want to know what you're talking about. They want to be able to read what you're going to be talking about, prepare questions, or prepare public comment. And so we do take that very seriously. We post agendas on our website. We also post them in front of this building, at our municipal courthouse, and at our library. And then the one thing I would caution is if it has not been agendized, if it does not appear on your agenda, we can't discuss it in an open meeting. Now, if there's something that comes up out of discussion that you're having that is agendized and it triggers another topic, it's certainly okay to say, I would like to see this come back on your agenda, but you cannot have a conversation about it if it doesn't live on that agenda. Okay.
I have another question on that, sorry.
Okay,
So one of the things we are,
who's the teacher's pet now?
he raised his hand.
He did.
I could be less polite if you.
No, it's fine. What's going on?
So we're looking to attend multiple city events. Summer. We have, let's just say the three of us are at, at a booth at a meet need. What are the rules around having, the ideas for the public to talk to us? Bring up subjects that we're
Yeah,
talking.
we actually publish our meet, greet and eats.
Okay.
So those are already noticed as public meetings.
So how does the agenda work though, is my question.
There is no agenda for those. Those are just kind of a very organic, folks can come up and chat with you and get information.
I guess I'm trying to understand, so where's the line? Because if there's three of us, it's a meeting. If we're
Yes,
talking about city
our
business
meet-
with
our
people,
meet, greet and eats are actually considered social events
so we're still allowed to talk about city business.
to an extent. Like you can't get into the weeds on city business, but if people come up and ask you questions about the transportation master plan and what your plans are in the next 12 to 24 months, you could certainly speak to what the board plans to do. But you shouldn't pull specific pieces out. You can let them know we're gonna be discussing this at the June meeting or the July meeting or whatever. You can direct them to staff with their questions. Yeah, but it's not meant for the three of you to sit and have kind of a one-on-one or whatever with one citizen. Have you been to one of the meet greet needs yet?
Not as the board, no.
Okay, yeah, it tends to be very organic and free flowing, because most of our council members are there, but you don't see them all clumped in one spot. Even though they have a table, they're out, they're free range. They're just moving around. So, and again, it's just be mindful of what you're talking about and how in-depth you're getting. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so, I think meet greet and eat is probably one type of example because it's a city-led
Mhm.
event. Let's say, like, we're going to, we're having a booth at the farmer's market for one of our projects. Let's say TMB wanted to join us. Would they have to publicize that? Is
So-
that allowed?
It is allowed, but what I would ask you to do is let me know, and then what I would do is publish an agenda. It doesn't have any topics on it, but what it would say is 3 or more members may be present.
Okay.
That way, it's made public notice has been made to our citizen, and if they choose to show up and attend that event, then they know there may be 3 or more members of the board. We do that for council when they attend events that are hosted by other cities or other entities. If we know, even if it's a grand opening or a ribbon cutting in our city, we will post an agenda that says 3 or more council members maybe. Just to cover ourselves, right? Because we want to be transparent. And we want to make sure that we are giving our citizens as much information as we can and giving them every opportunity to participate.
A question about that.
So, the three of us are sitting here at the farmer's market, and there's nobody there, and we start talking about, do we talk about board stuff?
No.
Let's talk about fish.
Talk about fishing.
Yeah, there's 2.
Even though we've
There's
announced,
2, but even then you should really keep the board conversation.
even though it was announced as a public event or a public
Right,
meeting.
but has anything been agendized? Is there anything on the agenda? That's the thing, because that agenda is just going to say 3 or more are there.
So if they wanted to talk specifically about like TMP update, could we put that on the agenda?
You could. I would leave that to y'all to kind of figure out how you want to address that. And then just work with me to make sure that gets posted.
Yeah.
And that it can be it could even be a very generic, 3 or more maybe in attendance, and maybe discussing.
Transportation issues.
There you go.
Yeah. Or maybe mobility issues.
Or possibly some ability.
Could be some mobility as well, not just transportation.
Question on that though, does
Oh, Josh, look at you. You're causing trouble day one.
Does the three or more only apply to people on the board, or if I show up to that farmer's market and Kenna and Shane are there, does that become a meeting? Cause there's three.
No, they're not board members. They're staff. Yeah.
Okay, just wanted that
It's
clear.
board members. Yeah, Kenna and Shane are staff liaisons. They are not part of the constituted body. Okay,
Thank you for that.
yeah. Thanks for the question. What happens if we violate open meetings law? This is fun stuff. I'm sure you've seen stuff in newspaper articles about other jurisdictions that may or may not have had violations. We don't want to be one of those jurisdictions. A citizen, if they feel that we have violated open meetings law, can sue the city. Yeah, we would not want that to happen. Thank you, Robin. A judge could award some kind of monetary judgment that costs the city. But more than that, we lose trust in our citizens, which is vitally important. If our citizens don't trust us, then anything that we do in these meetings, whether it's this meeting, council, any other board, doesn't matter. So if you lose that public trust, you know, once you lose trust, it's really hard to get it. And it can really affect how citizens view all of our boards, even if it was only one board that did it. Well, if they're doing it, then I bet so is this other board. And then worst case scenario, if you are found to have violated open meetings law, you can't be removed from the board. Now, only council can remove you. They're the ones who appointed you, so only council can remove you. You know, knock Formica, we have not had this issue, at least in my tenure, almost 14 years. So not on my watch. Okay. And if you ever have questions about, and please, does this constitute a meeting, this or that, reach out to your staff, because trust me, Shane and Kenna have no problem reaching out to me. I love it though, because they have no problem saying, hey. So we're here to support you and to make sure that you have the tools and resources, but also the flexibility to do what you need to do as a board. CORA, so Colorado Open Records Act. And this deals with public records, which include your email. So again, use your city email for city-related business, because if it is found that you are using personal email, that can be subpoenaed. Now, are we gonna do that? No. I'm not coming to your house and saying, I need to look at your personal email. But again, if a citizen really feels that there is a violation happening and sues us, there can be a court order for you to turn over your personal email accounts. And there may be some things in your personal email accounts that nobody else needs to know about. Like, they don't need to know that you're shopping on the Home Shopping Network at 2:00 in the morning buying porcelain dolls. No one needs to know that. Just saying. So just be considerate of that. Also, text messaging. If you have a group text going on, let it be about fishing or meeting up to have a beer or a meal, not about discussions that are upcoming. Okay? Avoid liability. That's, know what the charter says, know what your code sections that impact this board say. Work through your staff liaisons, work through city staff, ex parte communications, really apply a little bit more to quasi boards, but those are those conversations that happen outside of the public realm. So just be very careful about that. Any questions, comments you haven't yet asked? You sure?
Tapped out.
I don't believe that at all. Anything, Josh? Anything else?
Come up with something randomly soon.
Okay, I love it.
Put it out there.
Okay, I'm gonna stop this. I'm gonna go back to the agenda. So at this point, I would just have the board members, and maybe we start with existing board members. Do we want to start with Matt? Just kind of introduce yourself. We do have a new member, so introduce yourself, how long you've been on the board, why this board interested you, and we'll go from there.
Josh and I are neighbors, so he knows me well, but I'll say it for the benefit of of people in the audience as well, and the recording. But yeah, I'm Matt Duff. I live on Easter Ave, and I saw how good transportation can be, seeing other cities and areas and reading some books and educating myself more on the topic, and really wanted to get involved in Littleton. My wife and I chose to move back to Littleton partly because how good the bones of Littleton are. I think it's a city that was built before car dependency, with Main Street and other areas, and so it has really great possibilities to have to improve as time goes on. And we love the city. We think it's a fantastic spot to live, and we hope to help make it even better than it already is. So yeah, that's a bit about me and what inspired me to join the board.
Awesome. Dave, you want to go?
Sure. Dave Evans, I live in Littleton Station, so I'm just up the street on Littleton Boulevard. And that's kind of what got me interested. Walking home one night and there were people having issues with the sidewalks. And I was grousing, and my wife just said, so do something. There you go.
Dave, how long have you been on the board?
Ooh, 3 years? I think this is my third.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
My name is Derek Mills. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer who lives in Littleton and wants to be a productive citizen, somebody who serves the community and bring my knowledge to somewhere where it can be really effective in helping the city advance and just be better and serve every citizen in the community. And this is one way that I can do that because well, we get a lot of like regular citizens, we don't get a lot of engineers and stuff that get involved, but from the citizen standpoint. So I want to see Littleton help everybody in any way possible, but to do it in an effective way.
Jeff Selzer. I live, I don't know the name of my neighborhood, actually. There's probably a bad thing. I live basically at Princeton Ridge. And along with Kelly Honaker, we are the last two original board members standing. I was part of the inaugural board. So I've been on since 2019. I've been in Littleton for almost 15 years now. I joined the board because I grew up on the East Coast. More density, bigger cities, better transit, I would say. I love Colorado and I love Littleton. Our transit, getting around the city is not quite as clean as it could be. So that was my big motivation to get involved.
Michael?
Yeah, hey, I'm Michael Gloden. I'm in District 3. I live right by Euclid Middle School. And I think this is my second of 3 years on the board. And I actually originally was interested in the Environmental Sustainability Committee, I guess it is, or is it a board?
Environmental stewardship.
Stewardship.
Yes.
Because that was newly formed a couple years ago, and my career and background is environmental compliance, so I thought I might have something I could offer. But through the interview process, they actually asked if I would be interested in the transportation board, and I agreed to it. And it's been a great experience so far, and timely with everything that's going on and the funding, and just, there's just a lot of focus on transportation. So it's been a great experience so far.
Gosh.
I'm the new guy.
Welcome to that.
Thank you. 2 years ago, I could care less about how streets worked, operated. When you drove on them, I just kind of accepted that they are the way they are. That's the way they've always been. And nothing has ever changed. With the loss of my son, just kind of opened my eyes and I realized that the whole world could be so much better for everyone. And so that's now what I do. And I just, I see the world in a light that I don't think anybody else can see it in. And I need to bring that to things like this. And so that's why I'm here.
Well, welcome. Okay.
Put my hand on something.
Be a tissue though, because every time you got that, you might get a little mixed. So, okay, for my last act, before I turn this board back over to y'all, yes.
Bring up one thing. So we do have two people who work for consultant companies that we sometimes, you know, those companies sometimes bid on work. We've talked with both Derek and Michael that if, you know, they have work and anything comes up before the board that could be potentially perceived as them, you know, something that they may bid on or currently have work on, we've asked them to recuse themselves, and we touch base with the rest of the group in Public Works just to keep an update on that. So just want to be transparent so everybody knows that, and we try to keep an ear to the rail on that stuff so that there's not even an appearance of any impropriety. So
Awesome. Okay. Good to know. So at this point, I will entertain nominations for, not a motion yet, to serve as board chair. If you would like to nominate someone, there is no shame in self-nomination at all. I am all for. Yes, Matt Duff.
I would love to nominate Jeffrey.
Okay.
Only my mother calls me Jeffrey. That's only when I'm in trouble, so.
Well,
You're in trouble. Does it require a second?
well, we're not there yet. First of all, Jeff, is it something you would be interested in?
Except yes.
Okay. Any other nominations for chair? Anybody want to self-nominate, or are we? Okay. Seeing no other nominations, I would entertain a motion and a second to appoint Jeff Seltzer as board chair for TMB.
I'll do the motion.
Okay.
Second.
Awesome. All in favor? Any opposed? Congratulations, Chair Seltzer. Awesome. We'll go through the same process for vice chair. Any nominations for vice chair? And again, no shame in self-nomination.
I'd like to nominate Derek.
Okay. Is that something you're interested in,
I
Derek?
would be interested.
Awesome. Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, I'd entertain a motion and a second. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none? Congratulations, Derek, as vice chair. With that, at 7:03, I am going to adjourn the transitional meeting of the Transportation and Mobility Board and turn it over to Chair Seltzer to call the order at 7:03.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Nice.
So
Any?
first item on our agenda is public comment. I will say we have, as a board, a lot to get done tonight, and so we are going to have 2 minutes for public comment.
That's not gonna work. The agenda has 3 minutes. Our public comment has been prepared for 3 minutes, and we're gonna have 3 minutes.
Well, it's up to the chair to determine. And Jeff, what I would recommend.
Yeah.
Because we have posted 3 minutes, even though it is up to the chair to reduce that, is to say that you'll do like 12 or 15 minutes, so 4 or 5 people, and then you can continue the rest at the end of the meeting. If you want to. We've done that in council before.
And I'm sorry, don't mean to be difficult, but
Right.
we got cut short surprisingly last meeting as well. And I
Just
anticipate,
so you know, with advisory boards, we don't even have to permit public comment. It's up to the board chair whether or not we do that. Just a minute, John. It's up to the board chair whether we do that. And if there are a number of people and we're already running late on an agenda, it's certainly up to the chair to determine if there's time for that. So I would just ask that you respect the chair's role.
I understand, and I just want to make my last comments just to make sure that
And I know
I
you've
wasn't
been
trying to be
working on time.
disrespectful.
I know you've been working, Mark, I know.
Yeah, it's not meant to cut you off intentionally. So with that said, but Shane, point a note, when we do agendas to the future, can we not put a specific timeline?
So what I was wondering is, you know, reading the rules and regulations and it said that they were going to follow, they're expected to follow.
They are,
the city
however,
council's.
but council is a different type of board. They're not an advisory board. And when council.
We're using our time now.
But real quick, when council did some consolidation last year on boards and commissions, one of the provisos that they made was that it was up to the board chairs for advisory boards to determine if they wanted to allow public comment or not.
So what I will say is at this point now, if there are any other questions, I know the clerk would be more than happy to answer emails or phone calls or an in-person visit. So I think what I'd like to do is 7:06 on her advice, we will go 7:20. And so that should be about 5, or 4 or 5. So if we could start, I'm gonna actually start on that side. You know what? I know you want it. All right, I will. We will actually start on this side if that's all right. If you ladies don't mind. All right, sir.
Mark, you can go before me. I'm going to basically.
Sounds like you've got the unanimous.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Consent. State your name, where you live.
Good evening. I'm Mark Flank. I have lived in Southbridge neighborhood for 35 years. I'm a daily recreational walker and runner on the Highline Canal and Railroad Spur trails. I understand each of you received a paper I prepared that is a walkability analysis of the Mineral Station walkshed identified in the 2019 TMP. The analysis destroys the city's Mineral Station access rationale for concrete pedestrian paths through the gulch. I hope you will read that paper. I was planning to address issues presented by that paper this evening, but unexpectedly had conversations with 2 passing random walkers on the Highline Canal Trail this afternoon near the junction with the Spur Trail. Although anecdotal evidence of the overwhelming opposition to the construction of a 16-foot wide concrete road through the Jackass Gulch, my conversations with these 2 walkers is consistent with the comments in opposition to paving and in support of a dual surface trail that you have received in response to your survey for the updated TMP. Because I did not pass any walkers on the Spur Trail, I decided to walk along with and talk to the 2 unrelated and random walkers on the Highline Trail. Both walkers gave me permission to identify and talk about them to this board. The first person was Nancy Arndt, an almost 76-year-old woman who lives near Elodie and Shepherd. Nancy was walking with 2 walking poles because of a torn hip tendon. She walks the trails at least once a week. She said she very much prefers crusher fines over concrete because concrete is too hard on her joint and bones. The second person was Elodie Meek, who is 58 and lives in the Heritage neighborhood near Cavone Park. After her stroke in 2019, her doctor told her to walk every day. She said she walks 8 miles per day, including up and down the Spur Trail. Because her knees are shot, she very much prefers any softer surface such as grass or crusher fines to concrete. Elodie said she wrote to the city about a month ago after hearing about the city's paving plans and advocated for a dual surface pathway. She said she received a very nice letter back saying that nothing could be done to change the paving plans, but because so many people have complained, the city will keep the dual surface in mind for future projects. I encourage each of you to get out on the Spur Trail, experience the limited level of usage, and talk to users of the trail about the city's plans for a 16-foot wide concrete road. I am confident that you will find from trail users that no one thinks that a 16-foot wide concrete trail in open space is a good idea, and that it will be a waste of public funds. To the extent that this board has any input into the current and future projects relating to the paving of recreational trails such as the Spur Trail, you need to listen to the citizens of Littleton and advise City Council that a 16-foot wide concrete trail is not an acceptable alternative. Thank you.
Nicely done, Shane. Well done. Good on your timing. Someone's gotta go. We have limited
I'll
time.
step
so-
up. My comment was going to be that I totally agree with Mark. I knew what he was going to say basically. But I'd also like to encourage this board to reach out to South Suburban Parks and Recreation and get an idea of how they feel about all this. I know Environmental Stewardship Board has reached out in the environmental aspects of the South Suburban Parks and Recreation relationship. And I'd like to see you guys do the same. I think that it would be worthwhile. Thank you.
I'll defer to, let them have a chance.
All right. At the end, would you like to come up and give your name?
Hi, I'm Connie Cantrell. I've lived in Littleton for 72 years. I'm living over at the Bradley House over on Datura. I want to thank Kenna for sharing and giving me information that I can share with my community about busing and about traffic calming practices. And there is an omnibus out there, and it's working, but it doesn't serve all of the community. And so as you're moving forward and looking at different services, having a bus that comes to certain places at certain times is much better for many seniors than having to do a reservation. We're also finding with the omnibus that they're giving different information to different people. So some people think they can go outside of Littleton and then they can't. It's a 3 to 7 day waiting period. So like if I want to go to a store, then I have to plan ahead of time, 5 days ahead of time, instead of just having a bus that comes on Monday and picks me up. And before COVID, that bus was coming every day, and nobody's asking for a bus to come every day. I'm also going to South Metro Housing board meetings and sharing with them that it's important for them to identify their busing needs and put it on their agenda and find that out. And so that is one of the things that I'm really asking that they do. Because I can see that we're really at a critical point of making some decisions that are not going to happen right away. But if we can get some of the busing back that was before COVID was there, that would be great. And while the omnibus is a great alternative, it's not taking care of all the needs of seniors and people with. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Wasinski, and I live in Allison Court, which is right behind Bradley House. And the last time we were here, Kenna gave us some notes about how to proceed with the crosswalk that we want improved to be safer. And we did put it in the system. And so I'm just going to read that just to remind everybody, just the paragraph says, Bradley House, Allison Court, and East Windmere Apartments are filled with seniors with disabilities and younger people with disabilities such as blindness. The current crosswalk signage is hidden by trees, and I did have the Bradley House people cut that back, so I don't know if that's something you guys also watch, but there's a problem with that. It needs to be monitored. Datura is a busy street due to the library, the food bank, Woodlawn, and then people walking over to Gallup that way to Kettering Park and the museum, and then and other businesses. Many cars come down Datura each day, and they're moving way too fast for that their crosswalk. So it is like I mentioned once before that I was hit in a crosswalk and had my ankle broken in 3 spots. I have a bunch of hardware now, can't go through security things. But so I was in a crosswalk, so I know it happens. There's no guarantee, but I think I do want to be safe, and I want other people around not to have to go through that. So another problem is there's some big cars and trucks that park right by that sidewalk. And you have to like go in the middle of the street and go like this to see if you can go around. And so there should be some kind of a regulation about how close you can park to that crosswalk. So anyway, because the collection of apartments, churches, businesses, and the amount of foot traffic, it does seem to be higher than other areas. And then disabled people do need a little more time to cross. Just those are the considerations what we're looking to be investigated. So that's all.
Thank you.
Hey there, my name is Robin Bernstein, and the reason I'm even here is because I don't want to get killed. You know, I've been walking for 25 years, and that's why I've even done these book reviews, because, you know, I watched the car, and there's just too many of them. But anyway, killed by a traffic engineer, Wes Marshall. Wes reveals how engineering standards that are supposed to make streets safer or more efficient actually do neither. They invite speeding, make walking more dangerous, and don't save drivers time. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, we shape our cities, afterwards they shape us. In some cases, they kill us. The Inglewood Station in Denver, Colorado was a national poster child for good transit-oriented development. The new burnt green bus in Inglewood is exactly what we need in Littleton. So bring back the shopping cart, like Connie was saying. It was great. To have a functioning transit network, don't spend millions on parking garages. Instead, focus on biking and walking connections. Make it easy for people to know when and if the train or bus will show up. Also, make sure the traffic engineers are counting people, not cars. Okay, the sight distance gives a driver the chance to perceive and react to problems, unless the driver is distracted, dull, or feeling insecure. This is how much distance drivers need to see something in the road and stop the car in time to not hit them. For example, the intersection of Nevada and Main Street. Okay, I'm walking, they're coming down Main Street. I push the button. They're coming down so fast, those cars. They need to start slowing down on the Buck Center, on Prince, because when it says for me to go, I have to look and say, stop, I go first. Then usually they give me the finger, and it's like, I don't care. But they need to slow down. It's very, very dangerous. And so stop, they may kill somebody. In suburbia, there is only one available lifestyle for the sedentary person: to own a car and to need it for everything. So I know there is a dislike of physical movement for the, regular sedentary person. So I suggest riding the light rail and the zero. I know it seems scary, but I do it all the time. And this will thrust you into a new social reality in a world of awareness, curiosity, a world beyond the car. So, thank you.
How many more do we have that would like to do public comment? Is there one or two? One? So why don't you just go ahead, Pam? So Pam will be the last one then.
Okay. My name is Kim Shepard, walking half from here, and I'm going to disagree with Robin and say we need to solve for all forms of transit. 40% of the estimate in America is that 40% of people really have mobility issues, whether they're blind or old or young or whatever. So we need mobility for everybody. I do not like hearing these public commenters say, oh, we only need to solve for walkers. I'm sorry, or bicyclists. It's wrong. Your job here, I hope you accept it, is to solve for everybody, or as many as we can. Engineers know this. That's what we do all the time. That is the joy of the work that engineers do. And we can do it. I'm going to tell you, I'm very confident that we can do this kind of solution, but we got to do it right. The city is not doing it right. So I'm going to point out the example of the TMP and the mini case of the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan. Now, are you guys and the public engaged in an interactive process to plan that? And are we first informed by what are the design drivers? What are the design constraints? What are 3 scenarios at a high level that are totally feasible that integrate land use with the vehicular impacts and the possible bike and pedestrian impacts? And then the financial impacts, we also need that. That should be a basic city planning finding. We should always get that for every plan that we consider. You should definitely get it for the comp plan and the TMP integration, but you know, a baby step or a first step would be the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan. But you weren't involved in any of that, are you? And neither is staff bringing all of us the impacts of Littleton Boulevard sub-area planning impacts. This is a failure of our city. And our city needs to fix that. It's a management problem and we don't have the right people on staff to do that. We've got to get that done. So, and I assure you, once we have that, we can solve these problems together and successfully. Finally, I want to say the open meetings law stuff sounds scary, but thank you for including the public. And when you share your documents, thank you for putting the documents. I know you don't have to. The clerk makes a point of saying you don't have to do certain things. Thank you for going above and beyond, because the public, you know, the more you inform us, the better we will support you and learn about what you do. This is every advisory board, and I want every advisory board to get credit for what you're doing so that the public knows what you're doing. We all become stronger if you share information. So thank you for sharing the documents tonight. You don't have to. Thank you for doing that. And the open meetings law for you makes you, it's hard to learn how to work in a board, but I assure you it's worth learning Robert's rules and stuff like that. It'll pay off in future boards and commissions. Thank you.
Nice touch, Matt.
All right, welcome everyone. Let's get moving. So on our agenda tonight, really the primary goals here are we're trying to get ready for the statement of work submission for the update of the TMP. And staff has asked us to provide something in the neighborhood of 5 topics, themes that we would like to see integrated into the TMP process and or we need to try and figure out what those 5 topics are. We need to dig into them a little bit, develop vision statements that the board is comfortable with for those topics. And so that's item number 1. So tonight we're going to get started on brainstorming, getting the full list of all of our thoughts and ideas of what we think is important. And then as a board, we're going to work through figuring out how we're going to come up with that, call it roughly 5. The next part of that is obviously going to be figuring out how we're going to get that work done between now and you're going to remind me the exact date you want this now, August 1st, is that what we decided?
Yeah, that's what we're shooting for. That's and that is predicated on having a January 1st start date for a TMP update. There's a little bit of wiggle room in that, but that's kind of what we set the schedule up on.
So that gives us exactly 3 formal meetings to work through that. We've talked a little bit about potentially having some study sessions as well. We've also talked about the idea of dividing into subcommittees so that we can divide and conquer on that. We can make that decision as to how we want to get there. And then the last big piece we have here is communication and public. Thank you very much in public engagement. We've talked about getting in, we're going to try to identify some number of events that we're going to attend between now and call it the end of the summer, where you need to have some ideas on what we want to do in those events and what we want to bring and who we want to bring, as well as there's also just the communication side, Littleton online and potentially other outlets. Which ones do we want to use and what do we want to talk about? So this whole, like I said, talk about it pretty quickly. Getting it done is going to be a whole other story. So let's get started with the idea of the themes and topics for the TMP. Can I ask you, would you like us to use the whiteboard, Shane, or are you open to being a bit of taking some notes for us and just using the screen up there to
Yeah, I mean, I think,
our ideas down.
yeah, I think, yeah, we could do either way, whatever you want to
I would
do.
ask if you don't mind, just pull up a Word doc or something and just take notes as people say a lot. So as a reminder, so we've gotten lots that you've been spammed and bugged about the homework to do. So hopefully all of you have come having reviewed the surveys where we had something like 150 some odd people take our survey, which by the way, huge thanks to Eric and Matt for pulling that together. I think I found it very helpful. I know 150 is certainly not anywhere close to a representative sample of the entire city, but we did get some feedback's better than no feedback. So there were a lot of ideas that came out of that. We also have ideas, and Josh, I apologize, you may not be familiar with it, but we did do a presentation to the city council last year at the study session where we had our own priorities. And so those also hopefully are informing your thoughts and ideas. But I would like to just ask everybody, I think first step is let's just kind of go around the room, get everybody's 3 to 5-ish kind of highest priority ideas up on the board. And then we can have a little bit of discussion around those. And then I'd like to we can kind of get to that 4 to 6, I think is what we talked about as quickly as possible. If we struggle with it, we'll figure it a better way.
Is the survey closed? Is that, or is it still?
That's a great question. I
I
don't
believe
know.
it's still open. Let me check.
Okay, I was gonna suggest we keep it open, especially if we're gonna be going to events and trying to keep interest going surrounding the TMP.
Where do we get our surveys from? Like, how do we get our engagement from the survey? Was it an email that went out, text message, social media? Who are these people?
Yeah, so this was just, we use, we're Microsoft-based organization, so Microsoft has Microsoft Forms, so kind of working with the board and some suggestions from, what people, the previous board meetings, we came up with 5 just basic questions about, what kind of transportation to use now, if you could use another type of transportation, like what would you prefer? And then, what are topics you want to be in the TMP? Other things we need to know, if you're familiar with our current transportation plan, is it good? Is it bad? What needs to change? Stuff like that. And then so that way, the advantage of that is that we can access all that stuff whenever we want to, and see those responses and everything like that.
How did you engage the public?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was the other part. So we worked with communications and they put it out over our social media channels and I believe as well as the Littleton Report online. So there was Facebook, even LinkedIn, there were some posts on LinkedIn. So, okay, cool. And just for some perspective, 153 responses, that's more than we get for some projects that we ask for virtual engagement.
$5 million projects, we don't get that kind of.
Yeah, so we always want more, but.
Kind of another leg is we're also gonna be putting out flyers and meeting the public at public events is another leg of that effort to try to get more public feedback to what the future of Littleton's transportation master plan should look like.
Yeah, I appreciate the 5 questions, totally, survey to take, so.
I'm gonna go the other direction. I was really I would love to see one more question in there, which is just what district you live in the city, just so that makes sense of geographically where people are coming from. And then the other comment I had is there were a lot, but there were not a lot of comments on the TMP, and there were a decent number where it said, I don't even know where to find the TMP, I don't know what it is. So if there's some way to just put a hyperlink to the TMP itself, there, that might be useful.
Was there any way of finding out if people were responding more than once? Any filter for that?
Yeah, so there's not, and so this is kind of one of the kind of catch-22s that we have with surveys. We prevent that by asking people for contact information, but we find that if we do that, we get much lower responses, and so so we're not using this necessarily as statistically valid, but as an idea to kind of get different ideas from the community. So
We can filter.
yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the survey results or anything else before we move on? All right, Matt, do you want to start since you're at the head of the room?
Yeah, I did that for intros too, but I can do it again now. We're doing the survey themes, which 3?
Well, to be clear, it doesn't need to be limited to survey themes.
Okay.
I think it's what you think are the most important topics that we need to include in the TMP or at least in the TMP process.
Okay. I would say revamped road classifications is probably the top one. And then this is somewhat broad, but having a transportation master plan that is a bit more specific with specific goals, with specific timelines, I think is a really important priority as well. And then I would say active transportation and safety and transit and multimodal options. Those first three, I think, are, pretty much what I would say as well. I do agree with Pam and others that like we can't fully only focus on bikes and peds. So I do think that those are important as well. And, they can go hand in hand. As we make things better for cars, we can also work at the same time to make them for other modes of transportation as well. And then I would say a focus on school safety, getting our most vulnerable citizens to school, to wherever they need to go, be it the people in schools, the people who have aged out of driving or whatever the case may be, getting them to their places safely.
Anything else? No, he's on mute, so that's definitely. You're back, Michael.
Yeah, I'll go next. I had a hard time narrowing it down to even five. I think I have six.
We'll allow it as long as they're good.
Okay. And I did mostly stick with the list that you provided us, Shane, with one exception. So bike and ped safety for sure. Sidewalk improvements and walkability and combining that with crosswalks, because I think those two are pretty closely related. Traffic calming and speed enforcement. I think, again, those could kind of be combined.
Hold on. Sidewalks.
And crosswalks.
Anything else on that point?
What's that?
You said sidewalks, crosswalks. Was there a third thing?
No.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Crosswalks. Multimodal connectivity, which is pretty broad, but and I would tie downtown into that as well. And then and school safety. And then just a couple of observations. These aren't necessarily topics per se. I guess they could be. In the interest of getting, broad input, not just from the public, from other stakeholders, I thought this could be an opportunity for some kind of joint meeting or whatever you call it with the Environmental Stewardship Board regards to, climate sustainability, see what their inputs are. And then similarly with the Planning Commission, I saw they had a recent meeting where they were talking about parking management and expressed interest in a study session with the TMP on that topic. And so I don't know if it can happen in time, but maybe there's an avenue to get some input from them as well. Because, parking is an important topic that we hear about a lot. And then the last one, I noticed there's no mention of pilot projects anywhere in the existing TMP. There's some mentions of like pilot technology and testing, new innovations, but not in the same sense that we've been using pilot projects for the last year. So I think this, the new TMP update, that could be an opportunity to kind of formalize that process and how those pilot projects turn into, real projects, or maybe they don't, and what that process looks like, and just trying to, put some guidance behind that.
And did you say traffic calming and enforcement earlier in the list?
Yes. Sorry, I think maybe that I didn't repeat it when Kenna asked for me to slow down.
Counting, was that 6?
Probably.
Might end up with 6 too. First and foremost for me is just that multimodal connectivity. That is making sure that anybody, any way that they're traveling can get to anywhere. I think that I'd like to see a focus on Littleton's assets when it comes to that, which are our schools, our libraries, our commerce centers, and just figuring out how are those all connected so I feel safe walking, biking, or taking a car to any of them. So that'd be my first. Taking more of a people first approach. And I know This does not mean an anti-car approach, so, but when you look at a road, taking it from the standpoint, if I just walked up on this road, do I know where I'm supposed to be safe, right? Or if I'm riding a bike, on a scooter, on a one wheel, is it clear how I'm supposed to be doing that? So taking that person approach first, and then figuring out where the cars kind of fit into that. And to go with that, right sizing our streets. So trying to work on our designs to give clarity to what the speed expectation is. It's kind of hard to put a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit on a 50-foot wide road. And so that clarity of mind in our designs is very, very important to me when we're looking at this. And then finally, small bites to get to those goals. So I think a lot of us would love to create this perfect, ideal street situation on all of our streets, and that's going to be $1 billion. And so I would like to come up with what are the interim steps we can take that provide the things that I've already said, the people focus, the safer place to walk, ride, and things like that, without having to completely redo a street. That might be our goal. We might have that in the TMP. Here are the 5 steps before we actually have that. So having that just built into the plan. How many was that?
Somewhere between 4 and 8, depending.
Yeah. We were allowed an outline, right? And I'm 2 per topic.
If you have another report, we'll throw it up there. Otherwise, maybe we'll hold off and you can see if someone else brings it up.
Well, finally, a community approach to our school safety system. And taking that just not from the streets, but also from the people. Bring community in instead of just trying to put up, it's 20 now. You know, that's kind of our current school approach, or it was when the first TMP was written. And how can we actually elaborate as a city to make that that school safe system just part of our community?
I will loop around and let Mr. Evans go next.
Yeah. I took a little bit different tack because I used your list and I was looking at it and went, well, okay, bicycle and pedestrian safety is really the whole envelope. But I'd like to switch it around so it's pedestrian and bicycle, because I think that's where we have the greatest need is and that gets into the lower parts of the list where our sidewalks and our walkability and the multimodal, that all ties into that whole safety feature, because if the sidewalks are garbage, as we saw in the studies, people are walking in the street. So I guess that would be my priority, would be to get the whole multimodal system up and running as efficiently as we can. And that really is everything else on the list. And it encapsulates the whole thing. And we just have to figure out which of those are cost effective and feasible and how we can pull that off. Because transportation for the elderly, disabled, and children, yes, of course. How do we do that and how do we incorporate that into something the city can actually pull off, especially if we're talking about circulator buses versus RTD, and I thought that was their role. The multimodal connectivity, we've looked at the trails linkage and we need to get that prioritized and make it happen. You can take a trail or a bike lane or be off street and get from A to B within the city. And that will help alleviate the whole safe to schools, and they all just interplay with each other. That's my 2 cents. And it really wasn't 5 because it's the whole treatment.
I'm gonna start with one of my things I really like to wrap. I wanna deal with ADA. We want to get ADA for design. We want to get it to connectivity. We want to get it to a point where we know how to get the city from the point it is today. And we can have a reasonable plan to meet the needs of everybody for accessibility in the future. And that can involve things like pro-ag regulations, that can involve experimental things that are being useful and successful in other communities, et cetera, et cetera. The next thing, and it's kind of like related to multimodal, but it's a connectivity plan. The TMP has a good start and there's a lot of good resources, but it needs to be able to be tied into means, methods, and how to get it to a complete state, because while it shows us the parts and pieces, there's a lot of missing parts and pieces, and I want to see and guide to where that's going to be a more complete mechanism. Outside of that, it would be kind of just more into the guidance for next level documents, whether that's bringing directions for like engineering standards, perspective for planning, like low level planning documents, whether it's kind of like that connection between the two. And then I think the final
Connection between planning and.
so like going from like the transportation master plan to the next level, or how it better pulls stuff from like the comp plan and stuff, because that involves questions. It's like when zoning goes on, how do we convert zoning into a size of street, like our street classifications, make our bike highways, pedestrian walkways, and stuff like that. And then the last one, which is on it, is I would like to be involved in fund mechanisms, because we can talk about great ideas all day, but until we can pay for it, we can't do nothing. And that is a challenge every community has. But if we can get some effective methods allowing that to happen, we can set realistic timelines and meet some of the accountability that the public and everybody that is in Littleton wants to see.
From my knowledge, because I have never looked at another TMP before, is funding commonly included in TMP?
Yeah, and I think kind of some of our plans in the past TMP is at a high level. I think like as we talked about, kind of getting detailed and like having 5-year plans. That's where you can get more into like, pursue this, put this aside in your capital budget, all this sort of stuff. So I think the level I would like to get us to, so.
Yeah, and depending on the agency, there's different requirements. So metropolitan planning organizations, which is like DRCOG for the Denver region. Any urbanized area over 50,000 people have an MPO. They're fiscally required. What am I trying to say? They're required to have a fiscally constrained transportation master plan. And same with state agencies, the STIP is their fiscally constrained plan. So for DRCOG, it's TIP, which we talk a lot about, the Transportation Improvement Plan. For local jurisdictions, we don't have any specific requirements, but we can take it to whatever level we deem necessary.
And Shane and Kenna could probably confirm, the more effective your transportation master plan, especially when seeking outside of city money, the more effective you are at bringing that in.
All right. Was that it? My turn. I will try to focus on the ones that I have not already heard something about up here. Let's see, I have one that I think and maybe Derek, you can tell me if this fits in to your ADA design, connectivity to accessibility. I'm not sure if you're focused purely on ADA. To my mind, one of the things I'd like to see us address is how do we guarantee access to essential services to every resident of the city. To my mind, if you can't get to essential services, if you can only get to essential services using one mode of transportation, we are now explicitly excluding people who don't have that form of transportation from our city. And so it's sort of transit related. I think it's accessibility related. So I don't know exactly where that fits in. Here are my two, I guess I have 3 big ones. One is what we talked about in here, the idea of culture shifts, right? Of changing the culture of this, of how we get around the city. And if we're candid, a lot of it is focused on car and driving culture, but it certainly goes beyond that. I think the bikers in here will acknowledge that biking culture isn't always conducive to us getting along either. But how do we create a culture shift in the city that values every person who's on the roads? And so I'd love to have that. I think Another big one that we have struggled with as a board and a city in general is communication and public engagement. It's on the construction side, it's on the planning side, it's on the construction side, it's on the post-construction side, it's on the, like, what do we want to do with our lives side? So how do we make sure that that is an essential part of everything we do? And then the last one I have, and I don't know if it was, I feel like maybe one of the public comments brought this up, something similar. How do we make sure that this is integrated with our land use and economic development strategies within the city as well? Because I feel like we tend to have this, we go down the path of like, we'll build something cool, but we're not really focused on the land use, we're not focused on the economic development, which are really all very closely interrelated. Those are mine. So that ended up being a lot more than I was anticipating. I thought everything would fit on neatly on a handwritten whiteboard, and it didn't. Now you took great notes, and so I would have probably put down like 3 words for each.
And I do want to mention Kelly's not here tonight. She did submit some responses as well that I noted here. So she talked about pedestrian safety, bike lane infrastructure, connectivity, sidewalks. She did say that roads were in there, but didn't seem to show up with as much passion as other topics. And then addressing the noted hotspots of congestion or safety for the roads would be important too. That has a visibility component that frankly appeases the public in many ways.
I'm gonna ask you to delete the second bullet in hers, because I think that was just more of a comment on the survey itself as opposed to something that helps us. So what right there is just hotspots of congestion or safety for the roads, probably the key right there. So now this didn't work out as well as I was hoping. I was hoping we'd be able to look at the whiteboard. I don't know if there's some way we can try to get those themes where we can see a lot of them together. I guess what I'd ask is of the board, if you were listening to everybody else talk, I certainly, there's some common ones that we see. So pedestrian safety, talk about multimodal, which came up multiple times. I will actually pitch another vote in for Matt's roadway classifications. That was on my list somewhere, but I didn't want to bring it up. So I guess I'd ask, like, as we go around, and maybe just one more quick turnaround, what are some things, or we do just open forum? What are some of these things that you guys seem to resonate with? Beyond your own, by the way, maybe you can't really vote on your own. It has to be something else. Just so we can try to nominate. Because we can start knocking. And by the way, like stuff you don't think makes sense in the TMP as well, or for us to be looking at. If you want to mark those as well, so we can start narrowing it down into a list. Let's start with Dave this time.
I guess one of the assumptions that we have all made is that we're not excluding cars and vehicles. Right? We're trying to improve things, but we're assuming that cars are simply going to be part and parcel of this whole spaghetti. And so I guess we need to remember to still have to have a road. And that leads into your thing about ADA and the comment about people with disabilities. Well, they've got to be able to get there and park. So I guess that would be my add-on.
So is it something to the, I mean, I'll sort of throw an idea. Is it something to the effect of how do we accommodate the reality, which is cars are still our primary mode of transportation, knowing that we also want to have these multimodal, and we want to increase accessibility for all users of the road?
$1 million question. That's the $1 million question.
I think everybody should also remember that the TMP is a guidance document. And while they can have causes in it, if that makes sense, like
They have what now?
Causes, like it can go focus on this, and this. But when it gets to those next level documents is where those major influences and those guidance are gonna come into play, where it's gonna say, okay, I'm making a street section, for instance. I gotta take into account cars, I gotta take into account bikes, I gotta take into account pedestrians, ADA. You know, we gotta take into account what materials we're making, where it is they're located at. And the TMP, so it's like, if there are focuses in the TMP, it's gonna provide guidance to the rest of the city and how they pull from that. If that makes sense.
So what I'm hearing is with guidance we ends up being the TMP, we would like to be mindful and careful about what guidance we provide. Because that will affect lots of future decisions. So we have to be very careful about, we don't want to exclude cars, but we also don't want to say cars are the ultimate priority beyond, above and beyond everything else. We need to figure out a way to structure that. Or more likely, probably the consultant needs to figure out a way to more properly structure that, word that.
That's their job, right? Well, it's like examples like Littleton Brewing opening up with no parking, but having parking access at the library, at the museum that are just down the road, but we still don't have good walkability to that. So it's those sorts of things like you great point. If we're thinking to the lowest denominator for everything, we're going to get the best result for everybody. And that kind of connectivity is going to help with our parking issues, going to help with our commerce because it's going to bring more people, less giant shuttles to get there. So yeah, that it is a multimodal, truly, not just people power situation.
I actually have a couple questions. I forgot to ask this earlier. I read that, I think it was in the Littleton paper, there's a Safer Streets strategic plan in process. So I guess I'm curious how that aligns with the TMP. It's completely separate. Are those elements going to be in the TMP or not? Or what does that look like if they're going to be drafted on a similar timeline?
So the strategic plan will actually be wrapping up in the next couple weeks.
Oh, really?
So it'll be finished, yeah. And you all saw that at the February meeting. It was what we presented to council, and so you saw the vision, mission, goals with that. So you can go back and look at that if you're curious. So yeah, and the strategic plan was really born out of, Safer Streets was rated really fast last year, right? And so we as staff realized we needed a little more structure of how we're going to manage it in the future. With the hope that it's not just a one-time influx of money, but that this becomes a sustainable program. And so how are we managing it? What are our goals that we're going to look back on all these different initiatives with that? Really good point with TMP integration. I think we're still trying to figure that out, but the plan is that it will be, all of Safer Streets needs to get integrated into the TMP.
Okay.
Not exactly sure what that looks like, but that is the current plan. I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, I would just say, so like all the stuff that we talked about with Safer Streets, it was kind of like this big, in my mind, at least this big list that it was kind of hard to wrap my mind around. And so the strategic plan was just taking all that stuff that's been discussed with you guys and with council and trying to put some like actions and timelines to it. So it wasn't necessarily like, so that's why we engaged some stakeholders and internally it was created. But the idea wasn't necessarily to like go out to the public and get new ideas. It was like, let's take all these ideas we have, but actually put a plan in place for how we get them on the ground, if that makes sense, versus the TMP is like, all right, let's go out to the public and talk about everything and then integrate that into a plan. So Safer Streets will be integrated into the TMP, but I think some people are like, well, you didn't talk to me about this plan. So
yeah, it's really more about program management at this point. With the idea that the TMP update is coming, and that's where we'd have that really robust public engagement conversation of what are the city's overall goals, mission, vision.
With that strategic plan, is that the document that allows us to go after certain funding? Because I remember it was called something else, safety action plan.
Yeah, it's not to the level of a safety action plan.
Not, okay.
No, and we went back and forth. Again, the strategic plan was really about program management. How are we going to manage this program? How are we figuring out what actions have we already identified, timelines, budget, all that stuff. There's elements to the safety action plan that are included in this Safer Street strategic plan. And the idea is that we'll include kind of the whole suite of elements as part of the TMP update as well. We're not sure if how that will be included, if it'll be in a separate appendix or if it'll just be wrapped into the chapters. TBD on that.
So for now, I guess part of our thing is just saying we want to make sure that Safer Streets are somehow included in.
Yeah, I just didn't want to lose, if that's going to be in a separate document, I didn't want to just you know,
Yeah.
it's like I'm playing second fiddle to the TMP or, you know, getting.
And Safer Streets also incorporates where we landed in terms of the Vision Zero, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which on this particular TMP, because I don't feel like the current one has it, but like the details of a street design. You know, we've recognized like a neighborhood connector on the current TMP, but we haven't said what that looks like. You know, like, is it bike lane or none of the above, you know? So how much does the TMP inform those decisions for the city? Yeah, so the updated version can totally include that. I mean, one of the things that so in our previous version, we kind of scratched the surface with complete streets, right? Where we say, okay, we're gonna identify street type, which is different than street classification. It's like street classification meets land use. And so how is like, even though a street may carry the same amount of cars, be the same width, it's different when it's in a neighborhood versus when it's, you know, on a commercial corridor. So we looked at street type. And then from there, the next step we need to go to is determining modal priorities and saying, okay, this street in this neighborhood or in this area, these are the modes that we're going to prioritize. And then here is how that lays out. So it's kind of the next iteration. So you're right, we haven't done that in the current TMP. And that's something that we're trying to do with the Alati corridor study and kind of scratch the surface on that. And then have that set the stage for actually doing that in the, yeah, so here's our different street types.
We also have sorry, I don't think you mentioned LEDs, did you?
No, not yet.
Our Littleton engineering and design standards are directly taken there. It's been a long week, sorry. They take these different street types and actually create a section that are associated with this. So anything that we would change in the TMP would then
be affect the LEDs directly.
Yes. Okay. And LEDs has been a project that has been kind of ongoing with stops and starts, but it is moving forward and hopefully will be adopted very soon.
Okay, but it would be revised based on how the TMP could possibly come back. Which I know is like what you don't want to hear. Yeah, that's a good question. We can ask that because that's, yeah, we can ask kind of the CIP group that and ask that question. Certainly they need to talk. And so I think that's a question of how much like, I think if to like go in and kind of radically change the street types we have from the TMP, the 2019 TMP, I think we would need good justification. And then from there, if there's changes, then that should be reflected in LEDs, but we can get more details on that.
Should we have LEDs be reflected on the current TMP?
Yeah, and LEDs is kind of more the technical document, so it's that like next layer of detail. And so yeah, so we need to like, if the street types change.
Nice together.
Yeah, yeah,
So this shows a local street, it's just a picture of street. I'd like to see like a street mix of what that actually looks like, and I'm sure the LEDs is actually more.
Yeah.
And one of the things like here is like when we, there's like certain things like you'll see local streets, you'll see arterial collectors, et cetera, and those things are kind of like street classifications across the board that are technically supported. But you can have kind of like presence, so like you can have like a local street and local street A and B or stuff like that where you look at those flavors. But we can't just create like a super local street that is a completely in the opposite classification, because that's gonna make it difficult for the engineering to be able to tie into how to make that work and be buildable.
Give like a broad overview, an umbrella of like, this is kind of what we expect on this type of street. So when you go to the design board, keep those scopes clean for future contractors and things like that.
So I will, Matt likes playing with his graphics. I will take that one step further, at risk of derailing us even more, is, you know, what I would like to see. So we said street classifications, and I had forgotten about the difference between street types and street classifications. Honestly, I'm pushing more for street types than street classifications. But what I would like to see in our existing TMP, we have a pedestrian priority corridors, I think is what we call them. I can't remember exactly what we call them. Pedestrian priority streets. And we had a map of bicycle priority streets. We have zero definition of what that actually looks like. So that I don't know if this is part of what we should be doing here, if this is just me like being like, hey Shane, can you make sure it's in there? But like, to me, that is, I think we should have it very clear. A pedestrian friendly street has these characteristics. Like this is what it will, how it will be designed with these minimum elements, and a bike friendly bike priority.
And I think it would be good too to say if there's reconstruction on these seats, like maintenance or reconstruction on these, that we implement the things, because we might have classifications at first, but we don't have the budget to do any of them. But then, like, what are the triggering events, that make it so these things actually get put into place?
Well, I think that gets to, I think it was you brought it up, the whole idea of just like, what are the incremental steps? Actually, I can get really behind that, by the way, is key theme of like, not just having the long-term vision, but also having a little bit more detail of how we're gonna get to that vision. What are the milestones to get into that vision?
Yeah, because if your vision is to look like the new Euclid Avenue, where it's kind of an asymmetrical street, well, if we're just gonna put down paint after pavement, maybe we should be thinking about changing behavior to that future design. So, yeah, those incrementals are so important and way cheaper. So, yeah.
Also gives us lines in the sand.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think too often we can just make the world's most perfect TMP, but if we can't get there, you'll see that just no action happens on it.
Correct.
So I can get behind that. Maybe you might, sorry, I should have like two new takers, one going on each side.
For that, Kenna, for the incremental steps, can we add another one saying what are the trigger events that would necessitate up leveling the street to the new classifications, or something very specific like that?
Well, I think we should look at the classifications, not necessarily on, I think the current classifications are kind of more around like how many cars use that every day. But if we looked at more of like what the classifications as like, this is connecting a neighborhood to a school, or this is, connecting commerce to a trail, or then it doesn't change. It's always that, regardless of more cars start using it, we're just adapted for its current modes. Does that make sense?
I'll actually throw that. I'll take that and throw it into my definitions behind the pedestrian bicycle priority streets. I feel like maybe we should have like our safe streets to school. What do we call it? This
Safe routes to
safe routes to school. We should define what safe routes to school streets look like. What safe routes look like, period, street or not.
Yeah, there's some systems like this that have like the speed on the road dictates the type of infrastructure for other modes of transportation based on the speed of cars. And I think that that's a really interesting part of this as well, of saying like, for instance, there are some that say if a car can travel more than 35 miles per hour, then the bicycle path must be barrier separated and off street, and if there is no bike lane or separated bike lane, if the bikes are supposed to travel in the lane, then the cars cannot exceed 15 miles per hour. Like I'm not saying that's what it should be, but I'm saying that like having like the speed of cars is really probably the primary dictator of safety in a lot of ways. And so it's saying like we classify the streets and what type of infrastructure is on them based on the speed of cars.
I see that method as taking that safety first approach to the street and saying that somebody has to walk in the middle of the street, that the speed limit should never be over 15. And since we don't have sidewalks in most of Littleton, like maybe some of those streets should just be speed limited to 15. Because there is no safe place, and we know that's a safe speed to potentially be hit by, and so it's it's almost circular. Like the amenity needs to be there for the speed to come up, and if the amenity's not there, then the speed needs to come down.
Yeah. One of Josh's and I's neighbors walks out with her son a lot, and she can't walk on the sidewalks because she needs her son's arm because she's older in age, and she just has to walk in the middle of our street that's 25 miles per hour, and that seems a bit off.
Yeah, and she was actually told by her doctor to walk every day with a walker. But once her kids found that out, the sidewalks aren't wide enough for a walker. And so she was walking in the middle of the street, and now that's why her kids come out and hold her arm because she doesn't have the wherewithal to know what's going on around her. So we don't have sidewalks in Littleton. We need to be so clear about that. And that needs to definitely affect the speeds on some of these streets too.
We did ask Brent, and he did say if the future TMP guides something different than the current version of street types, then LEDs could be modified to support that vision. But just to reiterate, Derek, what you had said, the TMP is a visionary guiding document. and LEDs is a technical document, so just differences between the two.
So to be clear, the safe routes to school thing, I think, my personal opinion is that's part of that street types and roadway classifications theme. Okay. What other themes are we seeing or hearing throughout here?
I think, what you brought up is something that's gonna be one of the important things of this ultimately is getting to the public community, bringing them up to speed, because we've seen other initiatives in various other places that have been both successful or wildly unsuccessful based on how much the community has been involved into that. And I have seen the most successful efforts be on the one that incorporates most of the community. So the more the community knows about what this awesome transportation document is and what it does and what the future of the city is going to be because of it, they can get behind that.
So that is in the, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is the community, the communications and engagement around development. I agree with you. I, in my head, was thinking it would be part of the TMP as well. Like I don't know, and I don't know if this is common, but to me, it feels like they're talking about guidance on what streets should look like. I feel like there should be guidance on, here's how we communicate what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's common or if that's completely out of left field, but I would love some best practices, some guidance on, so that you guys, by the way, when you're going to do a new project, like you talked about pulling this down to go guide you through what you should do, it clearly says like you should do a survey or we should do this, have meetings or however, whatever
You would almost like to see kind of like triggers as a enforceable part of like how public is notified is incorporated in future activities and everything else.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you.
I'm all on board, because then it's a standard that we can point to and say either we met it, right? And if we did, and then there's pushback on a project, well, we met it, and in the future we can change the standard, but if we didn't, then it's justification for us to go back and say, we need to do better. So.
Yeah, and that is something we are talking internally about more as well. I like it, yeah, if it's in the TMP, then it's an adopted council document.
Right.
Matt, were there any themes that you heard throughout that maybe you connect a few of our comments together?
Yeah. So a couple of them. I really strongly agree with Derek's funding bullet point, and I meant to mention that but forgot. And then also for parking, like the new Littleton Brewing Co. I've been hearing a lot of people say, "Hey, why on earth did we let people build this when there's not sufficient parking there and they have to park on the streets?" And I really just think that Littleton should come out with a policy in the TMP about that, like state very clearly what direction we want to go in this, so that it's not like a public debate all the time about this. Because from my perspective, the Littleton Brewing Company does have ample parking because you can park in the streets all around the Littleton Brewing Company. And, when there's track events or when people are coming to use the Highline Canal, they park in front of my house. And I don't view myself as owning that land. I view that as the city's land and the public's land to park. And I think of that. I think we need to have a policy about that. Like, does every business need to provide more than enough parking, for their busiest times? Or is the parking, a shared parking on streets and things around it? So that's, I think it would be good to just answer that question, and get some direction on that. Because from my perspective, in the classifications of the neighborhoods and the streets and things like that, Littleton Boulevard is like a walkable neighborhood with local shops that people would walk to. And we can't require everyone, to build these big parking lots and also have it walkable, so something has to give there. And so I think that is something that I think it would be good to get, to make more clear so that we can point to that in the TMP, whatever direction we go, and I think that's one of my perspectives. And then, yeah, I think, I've said this a few times in the past, but I really think that creating a connector network, of, anyone in between Littleton Boulevard, Broadway, Mineral, and Prince or Santa Fe, has bicycle infrastructure within a quarter of a mile of their house or something like that. like creating these the corridors first of bicycle infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure so that people can get places, I think would be a good area of emphasis as well. I don't know if that's the TMP or if that's just, goals of council or, whatever the case may be.
And I'll jump in and then I'd like to hear from Michael, if you don't mind. So your zoning I appreciate you put the zoning ULC because you were thinking the same thing I was. So when you're talking about parking, Matt, not to toot one of my, to promote one of my ideas, I told everybody to go for others, but to me, that's the integration of land use and economic development, right? Parking is a component of that. And to your point, you have great points about like Littleton Boulevard, like what kind of streets do we want or need to have in commercial sectors? Do we want big, busy, fast moving traffic, or do we want them to be more pedestrian focused, or do we want to have some mix, and how do we want to define that? So to me, in my mind, that all swirls together into one general theme.
I agree. And I was specifically commenting on it in the context of parking, but I agree with the overarching point as well.
Yeah, so one thing I do want to caution everybody on is the state has passed a lot of regulations and stuff. And parking is one of the subjects that comes up in that while there's a lot of things that we want to pursue, we're going to be very limited by a lot of mechanisms that the state has required to be minimum maximum standards. And some of those are going to make a few of these a lot harder to realistically achieve because the state has kind of just said, you will do this or play in this sandbox.
Well, an example of this, like when I went to Cherry Creek for a business dinner recently, and I parked 3 or 4 blocks away because that's where the parking was, and walked over, and that seemed very normal to me, but I also noticed that they have, I believe, municipal public parking garages. I went to Boulder for a work meeting recently and noticed that their walkable street had a parking garage, so as we're looking through this and looking at Littleton Boulevard and Main Street, what we need it to be, it's classified as a walkable neighborhood street, an area for the ULUC. But then people are also saying every business needs gigantic parking lots, which are contradictory, so that's my point. And then maybe like according to the state's law, we have to build a parking garage or something like that. I don't know, but yeah.
So can you just add parking to that zoning ULC implications just as a sub point?
And this is something that the Unified Land Use Code dives into in pretty deep detail. So I mean, it's based on like area of the city and land use and size of the building too. And so there's formulas for minimums and maximums. So we can certainly look into it. I think we'll have to talk to planning too and see. I mean, we obviously don't want to conflict, right?
So we could use the TMP to create safe walkable parking. Like when I go to Dick's, I park at Nordstrom and I don't care that I just walked like a kilometer, right, to get to my destination because that's the expected norm and it's safe.
I hear you. I'm gonna put it just from a time perspective, like that's a great conversation.
We need to move on from parking.
Yeah, all I have to say is that, there's certain things that we can include in the TMP or recommend, and there's certain things that are covered by the ULUC and zoning, and so obviously
There's no bad ideas in brainstorming.
Just tempering expectations. They will be stakeholders as part of this and we can obviously work together, and the TMP could also inform future ULC updates, right? Like that could be part of the vision.
So I like the funny Matt.
I just have one more parking question. Is there a parking plan or study? I tried to find it and I didn't, or is it underway or we just talked about we might need one?
So downtown, we've identified the need for a more in-depth parking management study that has not started.
Okay.
And there's not one for the entire city. And there's not one planned.
On one of these public survey things where we did, there were multiple people who said they wouldn't walk 3 blocks.
And that's where that culture shift comes into.
Well, right.
Which I was gonna ask. Again, that was another one of mine. Does anyone else think that the culture shift might be one to talk about? Is there any other topics in here that resonate for you for that? Because here's why I put it on there. That's the one when we sat down and said we think this should be our priority, that all of us looked at each other and said, how do you do that? And so having Yeah, that's where I usually go pay someone, and I don't know how to do it. I pay someone to do it for me. And so it strikes me, I don't know if that would be like a deal killer for a lot of consultants, or if they're consultant firms that actually they have that as an area of expertise and might look forward to helping us with some of those.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the big goal areas as part of our Safer Streets strategic plan is that culture shift aspect. And, you know, that was a big topic when we were going through kind of the Safer Streets effort last year with you all. The idea of like identifying safety champions, we're slowly working on that through the Safer Streets. This year, we were kind of just trying to expand our reach of events and engagement and communication. And then the idea is that we're developing like a safety champions program that hopefully you all would want to be involved in. So yes, I do.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is in my mind, safety is one of the things we hear a lot of in here, pedestrian safety, bike safety, etc. My mind, that is part of that culture shift theme. It's like changing the culture to where all the users of our roads are thinking about safety as a high priority, not as an afterthought.
Well, and going back to your statement about cyclists not necessarily being law abiding, that part of the whole culture shift and the etiquette. And we've got a lot of people who don't know how to ride a bike properly. So yeah, yes, you're right. Put it on there because it's part and parcel to the safety of
Look at you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any other things that strike you guys as she sort of slowly cycles through these that about traffic enforcement? I don't know if that's part of culture shift or if that's something else.
I think connectivity is maybe one that we haven't specifically identified, but I think almost every single person brought that up.
Well, Matt's
That kind of links the ADA, sidewalks, a lot of that.
essential services, part of the connectivity as well.
I mean, one question maybe, and I think it is answered in a lot of our documents, but do we actually believe that anyone, regardless of their mode of transportation, within the main, like I'm not saying like a tank, but like regardless of their mode of transportation, that's a common mode of transportation. Do we actually believe that they should be able to get anywhere in the city conveniently? Because I think culturally, people would push against that. We've had, public comments in the last few weeks of saying Littleton's a car city. We shouldn't be doing this. So should the TMP have a perspective on that? Should the city of Littleton have a perspective on it? I think it does, but I think it'd be good to be explicit.
Yeah. I think freedom of mobility should be definitely one of our focuses. It's just kind of like, that's what Littleton is. You should be able to get anywhere you want to go, how you want to get there. And I mean, I don't know if your families would like, we want to go to the library and we're like, well, we have to get on Ridge. So I guess it's a car, it's so, I shouldn't have to make those kind of decisions. We should all be able to. I think that's something we can adopt, Matt.
It would certainly be my preference, but I just want to, pose it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the theme that is going to guide? And most of your documents usually have like a mission. I'm forgetting the other two terms.
Mission, vision.
Yes.
Goals,
objectives,
actions, key performance indicators. I can keep going.
I think what we should do from a high level is look at our streets as the assets that they are. We have more acreage of streets than we do parks. And start to think of them like parks that everyone could use rather than these big liabilities that we have to plow and pave all the time. And so if we're framing it in that way, how does everyone get to utilize that public space? So
I think again, not to cut you out, I feel like we've addressed that in a couple of spots, especially, you're talking about that everybody should have access to the streets, that everybody should feel safe in them. So I think we got there, and we can certainly, as we keep in mind, the next step here is to take these and go into some depth, is probably subcommittee. So really want the depth. Right now, we need to stay a little higher level and get the
Figure out what the topics
Get
are.
the topics down.
Like, you messed it up by choosing all 3 new ones.
Yeah, I
You
know.
should have looked for Vens.
I know. My bad, sorry. Totally. Right now it's 8:20, so typically we end meetings 8:30. We have a lot to get done. I guess I would ask, first of all, staff, are you okay sticking around for 15 to 30 more minutes after 8:30, or if you're not, you just say so?
You guys decide.
Oh my goodness. How do we feel about extending the meeting beyond 8:30?
I'm with the sitter.
So how do we, let's assume his sitter can't stay. How do we want to get this done in 10 minutes if we don't have to? So I would ask if you, do we have the themes and topics up here? I would, yeah, we do 4 to 6, I think is what we said. How many are we at now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5. So 5 is perfect. Very good.
Are they?
Street types and roadway classifications, communications and public engagement, funding, culture shift, connectivity.
Is there anyone here who feels like we're not, there's something that's important to them that's not fit into one of those 5 themes? Okay, what happened to it?
I don't think any of them explicitly highlight that like safety. And the overall theme certainly does. I think the overall theme is fantastic. So never mind. I take it back if we're really calling out that overall theme, then I'm good with it. But yeah.
Is culture shift a sub-theme to communication and public engagement, or is it?
I'm sorry, ask that question
Is
again.
culture shift a subcategory to communication and public engagement?
I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like it. I don't feel like it. I feel like culture, as I think about it, culture shift it's the whole city. It's
Yeah.
like communication is one of the tools we use to shift it.
And then is communication and public engagement a subcategory to culture shift?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Because I think it's broader than just culture shift, because it's about making sure the community understands what's going on and what the city is doing, and the city understands what the community wants.
I think a way to look at it is like, one is pushing out state sense.
Yeah, and Matt, to your point, we don't have safety as a specific category on here.
Yeah, we don't.
Every single one of these, though. So that's why we
Yeah.
don't, or we can create its own separate category if we
Well, we kind
don't
of,
feel there needs to be a specific focus.
we've all kind of agreed on this overarching theme of safety and multimodal ability. So that kind of affects everything on that list, but that's the
assumption.
Is that the assumption? Like, am I clear on that? Like, I think that's what everyone kind of said. So those are our topics and that is our.
Not that I'm gonna fight this hill, but what happened to our parking ULA? Your lane code?
I put it under street types and roadway
Got
classification.
it. I see it there.
Cause that's where the street types and roadway classifications, that's also, I mean, roadway classifications historically have been very much determined on size of roadway, number of vehicles, speeds, et cetera. Street types is really where you start to integrate with land use. And that's where, when the original TMP, we started looking at land use overlaying with the roadway classifications to come up with our street types.
I believe it exactly.
Okay, we can spend a little bit. All right, is there anyone who, again, I'm come back again, anything you think is super important that is not addressed in one of these themes, or we can't shoehorn into one of these themes?
I think it's good to start getting some stuff tested out.
Excellent. All right. So I'm gonna make a proposal on how we handle this, and we have a short amount of discussion, feedback. Here's what I'm gonna suggest. We have 3 more meetings to go. We have 5 themes. I'm gonna suggest that we address 2 in the May meeting, 2 in the June meeting, and the last one in the July meeting. Before each meeting, so before our May meeting, we have a subcommittee of 2 people to flesh out that theme, or excuse me, each theme. So I'll just pick on, let's just say it's you and Michael on street types, and it's Dave and Derek on communications and public engagement. We're gonna flesh those out. We're gonna ask these guys for a little bit of guidance on what exactly will need to be in the final thing, but I've heard vision statement and probably details and try to pull those together. The subcommittees will bring what they've worked on to the meeting and make the presentation. The rest of us can then, you know, comment and add to that. With the idea that at the end of that meeting, we'll have 2 themes. We're all but ready to go, if not completely ready to go. And we'll do the same thing for June, and we'll do the same thing for July.
And are we, and so we're looking at these topics compared to the TMP and looking for how we would improve, add to, advance it, or, I mean.
What I've heard is,
putting this in the context of the TMP.
that is a great question. So what I have heard, and again, I could use some fixing of this if I've misunderstood, is that certainly looking at how it compares to the current TMP, and if we have absolute things we want to improve is important. But I think it's also important for us to just clarify, this is important to us. So even if it's already in the existing TMP, to just reiterate that this is an important issue, that we, I mean, it's been 5-6 years. It needs to be revisited. There's probably new research and studies on it. There's, you know, shifts in thinking, so that the consultant will have to go after that. So it's, I guess it's yes, right? It's, we want this to be in the TMP, and specifically, this thing, we'd like to see those addressed and fixed.
Yeah, I think you could also think about it like it could be in terms of sections, right? So what is maybe missing from a section in our current TMP? It could also be in terms of like, is it metrics or is it an outcome that we want specifically like listed in the TMP to be achieved in the next 5, 10, 15 years? So the answer I think is yes, right? It's just kind of how you classify where it fits into. So.
Just something that we can also think about is, like, say we set these 3 meetings up, and like I see here in July that we're gonna have the LPS superintendent coming back in and talking to us as part of that, bringing the safety champions, bringing collaboration. Could we kind of have like tentative study sessions as kind of like a fill-in, like the superintendent wants to speak for 2 hours? We would obviously still need to take care of what we're going to take care of during that session, and it would be nice to have like a fallback, just if more things have to be addressed that we just don't plan for.
I'm open to that. I am also, now granted, we lose control of it very quickly, but we are going to be clear with everybody who comes in that there's a certain time limit. So you know, my first reaction is he gets 45 minutes. We have a 45-minute conversation, and that's sort of the end of it. But I'm open to having some additional study sessions to try to knock this out if you guys think that is necessary. To your point, we do still have agenda items for the next 2 months.
Yeah, be open to study sessions.
Study sessions?
This is a big deal. Like, it only comes once every 10 years, so like.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was planning for.
Okay, all right. Matt? If we're gonna do study sessions, my suggestion, I mean, the reality is the way we talked about with the clerk before, essentially what we're doing here is study sessions. We don't actually have real meetings. We have study sessions. And so it's really just a matter of having an extra meeting or an extra study session. If that's the case, I would say if we're gonna, we should just do this in the study sessions. And have our meetings dedicated, and we can pull a little bit of this into our meetings if we feel like it's necessary, but we should focus on these for the study sessions.
I think that would be a wise decision.
Yeah, I like it because obviously the interchange is great. And we found more things and we picked up on, and it's because we were having this exchange. So yeah, I think that's how we're gonna get a better document.
So then the hard part becomes, how do we get those study sessions scheduled? How do we do it from a scheduling point of view? So we have to look at calendars.
So I think we could send out a doodle poll for, you know, through July. And then everybody could indicate their availability, and we'll try, you know, if everybody could do that as soon, like within a week when we send it out. And then we can send out dates that seem to work for everybody, or most people, if not everyone can attend. And that way we don't have to do the, you know, we all kind of do that on our own time, submit it, and we don't have to do it here.
Great idea.
I will throw out, and I don't know if it works for anyone else, that the second Thursday of every month was sort of my idea. That way it's 2 weeks, 4-hour 2 weeks before between meetings. So I don't, and same bat time, same bat channel.
Say second Tuesday?
I'm sorry, Thursday. I said Tuesday, I meant to say Thursday.
Check on the city calendar.
So-
Third Tuesday next month.
So he'll send out the doodle, but that was my initial thought.
Yeah, we are gonna have to check city calendar. I forget the
We
rules.
can't do Tuesday.
Arts and culture.
I meant to say Thursday.
No,
Oh,
council-
yes, okay.
No, but council's on a 6-week break in the summer, so that does open up Tuesdays, actually.
Okay.
Arts and Culture Board, second Thursday at the museum.
Are we allowed to have board?
Yeah, it's just.
There's a lot of boards. We're gonna have to just, there's a good chance we're gonna be overlapping as part of this.
Okay.
Okay,
6
we
weeks.
can check on the city calendar, make sure that there's no conflicts, and then send out a doodle poll.
Yeah, and so we do need to get back quick because we will have to have our subcommittees meet prior to that.
Yeah.
What it is.
2 weeks.
All right,
Next month, are we meeting on the last Thursday or the fourth Thursday?
always the fourth,
The fourth, yeah.
and except for Thanksgiving and Christmas. All right, so what do we, can we go see this thing? Oh, you type it in. So what themes do we, is there anything we want to prioritize, or is it they're all need to be done, and so
I think they're all equally.
they're all equal.
Number one does have more sub bullets. If you want to save that for the, you said 2, 2, and 1. Was that we were gonna split it up?
The one,
Maybe.
that's a good idea. Anybody want to just grab one? Like who, we're gonna name 2 people per, so Michael, is there one on here that strikes you that you really want? I'll go a different way.
I don't know if I feel
Let's do
strongly about any.
communications and funding is the first one. So, who would like to do communications? Anyone? Anyone want to do funding? All right. We got Derek on funding, no one else, huh? All right, I would like to do communications. So, anyone else, either volunteer or be voluntold?
We're looking for pairs on each of these?
2 on each.
Okay.
You want to do connectivity? That's what.
I'd like to do connectivity too.
All right, we got 2, we'll do connectivity at those first, at this next one, since the 2 of you are excited, we got a full team. So we'll do connectivity and then,
I would love to do street types and classifications.
all right. David, you get to throw out yours.
Oh, connectivity, but I got, I was late.
You're too slow, sorry.
So where,
How about you and I do culture shift?
okay, sure.
And we'll actually do that one, this next one, since we got the 2. So you guys need to think about, we need some more volunteers.
Yeah, I'll do funding and,
Mike will do.
what's left? I guess communication. What, or is there another one we need? Oh, and street types. Sure, communication and public engagement.
I'll do street types as my second.
All right, so we got them all filled, is that right?
And Kelly,
Oh, yeah, we've got Kelly in the mix.
Kelly gets off easy because she didn't show up tonight. Kelly's a utility infielder, she'll just make it work.
I pick up 2 more categories.
We'll make Kelly pick up some extra load somewhere. It's not in the fun. All right, so what did I say? We're gonna do culture shift and connectivity first.
Mhm.
The next one, we'll do communications and funding.
Mhm.
And then in July, we'll do street types and roadway classification. Okay. I'll give myself 2 in the same, right? Or anyone in the 2 in the same? Michael got 2 in the same, that's not gonna work. So what about we move, Michael, can we move funding to first week?
does that work? Shift?
No, but you need to move connectivity down to week to the second month. It needs to be funding, culture shift. I think that'll work, right? No, so no one person has 2 the same month or 2.
Yeah, you did it.
All right. Funding and culture shift it is. All right, so that we got, so we're gonna come up with our dates for our study session.
Yes.
We know our teams here and you're gonna get this out to us as well. And so,
Yes.
I need you to just reach out, Derek and Michael, I need you guys to connect, and Dave and I will connect on when we're getting together for those. Last thing that I was hoping to talk about, if we have time, is the public engagement, which I think is important for us to talk about. So if we have time, we need to make time. There's a whole calendar of events that were put out. At a high level, I guess I'm looking for, because now we got this to do. We got some study sessions to do. We've got some subcommittees to attend. We've got our own meetings to attend. We actually have our own lives to live. How many of these can we realistically commit to doing every month over the course of the summer?
Guess I would ask the question, which ones do we think we're gonna get the most bang for a buck?
That's an excellent question.
Because some of them are like, we'll just be sitting around going.
I mean, what are we doing? Is it a booth or are we walking around and interviewing people and getting input or what is?
Apparently we're not having meetings. We're not talking, or we are having meetings, but we're not having that kind of conversations. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you what my view of this was. And if anybody else has, Matt, I think has some ideas as well. But my
Well,
thought.
yeah, I've been ducking out of a work meeting for 2 hours, so I just have to go now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
all right. I'm gonna jump off. Bye.
Does someone have his boss's email?
Is that?
Does somebody have his boss's email?
So what I was picturing is, and that kind of gets to what else was in this this deck here. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong. That we would have basically be there to give the short version of what we've been doing in the TMB, excuse me. Safer streets, all of our stuff about trying to create a safe environment for every user of the roadways. We're pushing for more connectivity, pushing for more multimodal, all of the things that we've been doing, and that and talk about the TMP and what the focus is, and as we start working through these themes, what we're trying to achieve there. My thought was we'd ask the communications department to put together a few like slides, like handouts or something to refer to. Yeah, and it's really public engagement. It's just trying to get people to understand who we are, what we're doing, what's going on. I'm not sure how much all of you have interfaced with like your neighbors and on social media. The reality is there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding out there. And once I start talking to people about what the real issues are and how they work, a lot of people start shaking their heads and go, okay, I never realized, or I didn't get that. So that's the idea, is to, and by the way, to take the engagement in so that we can.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was more getting information as opposed to being there to tell people about what we're doing. We want to do there.
So is this stuff all that we want to do before August 1st, or is this more like an ongoing?
Yes. Well, most of we have a lot of events over the summer.
Yeah.
And that's where, what I was told is that's where we get most people out, in the summer events. In the winter, it starts to die down a lot. And so that was why it was, you guys strike with the iron hot, right? Yeah, for sure.
And so at Little Jam Communications is kind of not allowing like project-based stuff, booths to be there. They wanted to feel more just like a hangout, a social, yeah. So, because we've asked on a few of our projects, like, nope, there's other venues, but not Little Jam. So that's why I highlighted them, just so you know, on the front end. But I mean, meet and greet needs are good. The criterium too, because you can come earlier in the day, set up a booth, talk to people when they're sober, and break it down as the races get more serious. So.
Will the city have a booth at most of these events, like just for general information and stuff like that?
That's a good question. I'm sure there'll be, I mean, city representatives will be all these. I don't know if we'll have a booth specifically.
We will so for Safer Streets too, on the what's left. That's kind of our Safer Streets types events. So we are going to be doing a bike rodeo at the Twilight Criterium. So there will be staff there.
Because I would assume we could probably utilize the city booth to kind of set up camp and stuff like that at.
Yeah.
Resources.
Yeah, and we can certainly provide like all of the stuff too, like the tent, the table, the chairs, and so.
And then
Yeah, so there's 3 during the summer, and so we just there's parks that's picked. They're on Wednesdays. They start kind of like late afternoon, like 4 o'clock. And then there's food and ice cream and a bunch of the city's different departments are there and you can just come, citizens can come and talk to staff or talk to council members. So yeah, that's the idea. Meet, greet, meet. Yeah. And so, yeah, if you're.
Bouncy castle for kids.
Yeah, fire trucks, yeah,
Andy's ice cream.
yeah.
I won't come if you don't let me in.
And then, yeah, Western Welcome Week, there's always, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on that week.
And I think like for the events where the city doesn't have something like formal, it could be something where maybe we don't exactly have a booth, but we have like something that identifies us, whether it's like a name tag or something we can engage at opportunity.
Yeah.
You guys don't have name tags, do you?
We did, in 2019.
We can get those.
If you're interested in that, that's.
I think that would be helpful.
Things like the farmer's market at Baker Park. I think we do any of that this summer.
Yeah, and we're trying to coordinate more of our public works engagement events, so we can only speak to transportation stuff right now. So we will be going to the farmer's market on July 1st, or
June 1st.
sorry, June 1st, to promote our Alati Ordo study. So that's another event that's not on this list, that just got planned.
Yeah, so that's permitted by the city, but it's, what is it, Littleton Q?
Yeah.
Q Plus is the one who puts it on, so.
And I think like, because it's not everybody's gonna be on each and every one of these events each.
Right.
But like some of the important things like having a survey up to where people that we can notify that say like up to 3 to 4 members, so that way we could add 0 to 4 at anyone. Be there because some people will come for an hour, some people will come for a couple hours. And we don't want to burn everybody out either.
Right.
I guess just from that one, you did the pedal. And you guys were there and there was really no traffic. Right? And I was there hanging out, but it became obvious. Yeah.
There's a good amount of traffic at meet greet meets, and that's one where the council members kind of float around and talk to different people and wear their name tags, so that could be a good one. And maybe you guys look this over and see what aligns with your availability. And then our first study session, like off cadence study session, determine that. I don't know.
I was wondering, could we do a doodle poll and see where the availability shakes out on these and then use that to kind of guide where we focus?
We can do that.
That's a really good
I was
idea.
sort of trying to go for the idea of like where you commit to one a month, and so we could just go pick which one.
Sure.
That's one, but I think that might be a good way to just come kind of the bottom up approach, like what do people actually attend?
Yeah, what's available, like almost just a sign up.
Yeah, Brent did say that during the last TMP, there was very successful engagement at the Criterium.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good time.
Although,
Do we get priority location?
Maybe.
Talk to Emily, who's been talking to Alexandra.
she's done. So on that note, and this is, I'm glad you brought that up because it triggers something that I had been thinking about, like Criterium, I'm guessing we're gonna get a very specific demographic with very specific views on whether we should prioritize cars or bikes in the city.
I'm gonna guess.
I would really like to figure out how we can engage with old Littleton type organizations, right? I mean, the not going, the seeing things exactly the way most of us are seeing it right now. I feel like it's really important to hear that feedback and to incorporate it into what we're doing.
You know what's not on this list are like anytime council has their own events. That's another idea.
Let us come.
I was at Pangroves.
Oh, those type of events. I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
National Night Out, if there's neighborhood block parties.
Yes.
And then, yeah, if there's other like local events, either put on by advocacy groups like Save Old Littleton or Vibrant, whatever.
Like, don't we have
We don't have a list of those, but that could be an action item for them.
Yeah, actually, last year at the Memorial Rose Garden trimming and cleanup
Oh,
and which happens.
right. Right, there's like a South Platte cleanup this weekend. So there's other type of community events too that.
I'd probably spend half the time talking to people rather than freaking meetings.
Well, I think, so
What you did there.
Well, maybe we can collectively, we can all submit ideas for additional meetings beyond what's on this list.
Yeah.
That's a good way to kind of round up some other options.
I will throw out a goal that I think we should try to do 3 between June 1st and September 1st. 3 events is,
I think that's doable.
that would be infinitely more than we've ever done.
And September 1st or August 1st?
September 1st.
And
Basically
Shane,
1 in June, 1 in July, 1 in August.
Feels
All the-
doable. It needs.
just to check, if we were to spontaneously show up and talk about our passion for the transportation mobility plan and stuff like that, as long as we're being respectful to detailed topics and just respecting information that's already there and just kind of drumming up general support. It's still perfect.
Yeah, based on the guidance we got from Colleen tonight, I think so, but we can, if we get more specific, they want to talk about this at this event or go to this event, then we can, clean that, but sounds like it.
Can you send the doodle around, I'm just thinking about what you just said, can you send the doodle around for the meet and greets? Just include those, so we can see who can go, and then I'm looking at like, there's one in August. Maybe we just focus on that for this summer, and make baby steps, right? And then if it goes great, we start filling what we want to do, next summer we can go to every concert, whatever there is.
Well, and then the other part of it is, you just go.
Well, that we can do as well, just put your name tag on and go.
Just go.
I like the idea of a more coordinated, and I like how, and I'm a big fan of the button system.
It's good to have somebody.
But beyond
And you
that,
get free pizza.
there you go.
Ice cream,
So you're blue in the face, you don't.
I think that's okay. All right, so we'll do that. I'm gonna go ahead and just postpone the communications part of this. Next month.
Okay.
We'll figure that out, because I do think we need to get some more communication into this. Online, I would like to see us, honestly, I'd like to see us try to just get into a rhythm where we can just post one thing a month. Every time it comes, or every 3 weeks, is that what it comes out, every 2 weeks? I can't remember. Whatever comes out, have something in every edition.
Yeah, every
Here's
2
what we're up to, here's what we're up to.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna put that.
Littleton report, like their reporter to visit one of our meetings, just so the agencies didn't.
Do they have reporters, or is it all self-submission?
It's self-submission. David is kind of the
We're the
spirit.
reporters. You're looking at the report. Yeah. They're all here right now.
It's not a real newspaper.
Yeah, it's all right, it's all right. So we'll handle that, we'll just on the next one, I'd like everyone to think a little bit about what that should look like how do we do some just small communications, maybe read the report a couple of times, make sure we all understand the kind of the format there, but.
There's been a lot of transportation articles in the past few months. It's been
We have tried.
several, yeah, it's been great.
Street updates.
Yeah.
The last thing that I'm gonna talk about before we're all open up to see if there's any other issues. I think it's important, I've heard feedback from several board members, I totally get it, like what the next meeting is you're completely blind to it, because we keep it to ourselves. So what I wanna do is, if you don't mind pulling up the whatever page that is in the agenda or in the packet. Want to give you a little insight as to what we have coming up and get feedback on it. So a little insight of how the process works. So Derek and I will be meeting with Kenna and Shane. We meet the first Wednesday of every month to talk about the agendas for upcoming meetings. So I'd say the bulk of our conversation is about the next month. And then the next biggest is the month after, and then the next biggest is the month after that. And then we're trying to at least get rough sketches of what's sort of in the parking lot. Like what should August look like? What should September look like? If we have an idea for October, here's one of 3 ideas might happen. So it's trying to have something in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 months planned out, or conceptually out there at least. So I want to let you guys know what we're looking at for May. And you can see this is what I have up there right now. There's a lot in May, and we will probably trim this back.
Yeah, we're not gonna accomplish this all.
We will. So again, it's like
Nancy wanted
everything
me here till
they're all brainstorming, right? Like a lot of this, anything but the coming month tends to be hopeful, optimistic. The reality is some things fall apart, or like, hey, we thought we had this study done, but it's not done yet, and so it has to be kicked out. But this is the general idea of what we want to talk about for the next few months. So looking for feedback on what do you guys like, what do you not like, what is important to you, is it up here at all? And it's in your packets, by the way, if you had a chance to look at it. So right now, I would say for May, what we're probably gonna focus on is the capital projects, because we did that for like 5 months now, or 4 months, some long period of time. So it'd be nice to get that done and understand what's going on in the capital projects. We probably, I don't know what we talked about with the communications subcommittee. Oh, actually, that might be a good thing to talk about, given that we're talking about communications. So perhaps we will, I'd like to get that communications thing done, because that also plays into having what we talk about at the meetings.
Do you think that's separate than this TMP communications?
Yes, this is about like how we as a board are
Yes.
communicating at meet and greets, and it leads into some of these sessions. Yeah, you talked about environmental stewardship. Next Gen was another one we talked about. We haven't gotten any progress on trying to do these joint sessions. Might be something we're not going to get to until after summer, given what we're trying to get done. We talked about doing joint sessions with other committees. So my guess is we'd probably do capital projects and communications. That's what that's meeting. Okay. And then June meeting, we could either talk about taking that transit conversation and moving it to June, or we also, this is where, of course I just screwed up. Roadway classification versus road type, that was that plays into our classifications and types, right? And that is, did we put that out for a June discussion? Is that right? Or was that was July, wasn't it? Because that was July. So the timing of that might be perfect to have that conversation in June. It sets everybody up. And then I had on there economic development discussion as well. I talked about that last night. I think there is. I do think that that's an important aspect of what we're trying to do. We need to consider. I don't know if we get both of those done in one meeting, but that's about what we have out there in the future. So ideas, thoughts, on both those two meetings, as well as other things you'd like to see added into the, and then we have the LPS superintendent in July. And he is signed up, right? That's like official, like he is locked in.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of who the he is.
The superintendent.
Oh, yeah.
So that's definitely in July.
I guess on the economic development, go back to Pam's point about the
We are working on contracting for that right now, so that has not officially started.
Well, I mean, that's it's a good thing to throw into the topic conversation, right?
Yeah, we'll make sure that's on the list.
So, and right now, we have been, when Tom was the chair, we've been meeting the first Wednesday, which would fall on the 7th. I don't know if that still works for both of you guys. 4 to 5 is typically when we meet, but we could also, we could just send out a form with this information, and then that gives, all the board members a couple weeks to think before that meeting and submit, we can send that out with the doodle polls. And then that way you can, they're just coming to staff, and then we can review those at our planning meeting.
You like that idea? Do they come in anonymously, or do we get to see who's whose?
Oh, we can make it so someone has to put their name in.
So we can kick all the days to the end of the list.
Yeah.
No problem. No variety. Wednesdays works for me right now.
I'll make it work.
We tend to, I mean, you shift it sometimes.
I have a dentist appointment every 6 months.
Figure it out. All right, that's all I have. Any other comments from the board?
Just a quick thing, Dave, you want connectivity, I need to get it to you.
You don't have to. I'm happy to let you have it. I was just interested in it, so yeah.
If it's one you're interested in, I'll be more happy to swap with you.
Does that screw up our?
Need to shuffle, but.
Hey, Derek. Don't be a nice guy in this one, just.
Yeah, just keep it. Just keep it. And know that I'll give you an earful.
I was gonna say, Dave is gonna.
Yeah, they're gonna hold it in, we know that.
I
Alright,
noticed.
anyone else have any comments? We're running late, you can get back to babysitters. Ken, I know you had something.
I have one thing, we sent an email out about participating in the ULI TAP grant project for Union Village on May 23rd. We've gotten no takers.
What is it?
You don't have to
Are
participate.
you asking because you need takers, or you're asking because you?
It's just, TMB was invited to be a stakeholder as part of this project, and I can give a little more background too. So I just wanna make sure you all
That's next month.
have seen it, May 21st.
Yeah, May 21st.
Okay, I thought it was this month. I will get back to you on that. I think I can make it work.
Okay, I do need to give an answer like tomorrow. Yeah, so it's May 21st, which is a Wednesday. Stakeholder interviews, it's hard to plan around it because they haven't given us clear times yet, but the slots are either from 10 to 12, and there'll be a 45-minute slot, so it'll just be 45 minutes within that 2-hour block, or from 1 to 3. So we can have up to 2 participants. Again, no one's required to participate, but TMB has been invited to be a stakeholder.
Unfortunately.
That's all right. I think Dave, you can't. Kelly, I've heard back from. Sounds like no one else.
I don't know if you want me to do this. 2 hours under my
Yeah,
belt.
Derek.
It's been a very busy.
I feel that.
It's really important to us. It's Prince Street North Gateway,
Yeah.
which is already overparked. And then they're talking about putting bicycle corridors on Prince, when already it's overparked. And then they want to redevelop Geneva Village with 3 stories and 4 stories across the street. It is unfeasible. You guys should be there.
Yeah, so this, we submitted a grant through ULI, the Urban Land Institute, and so they convene a group of experts in the fields of planning, design, architecture, urban design. We have a whole core area that includes this whole Littleton Center, Geneva Village, Prince Street up to Santa Fe from Barry, Essex Hotel, the other shopping center over here, and some of the townhomes, and it's a visionary process. Just to reimagine what like the redevelopment of Geneva Village could look like, how that could spur other development in the area. And then they'll give a presentation at the end of this 2-day long period. So that will be on the 22nd at 5 p.m. in the council chambers. So highly recommend you at least attend the.
So are they looking for our feedback and engagement, or is it more educational?
This is a stakeholder group.
Participatory.
Yes. And so there's I think there's 5 or 6 different stakeholder groups. So this is just one that you would be a part of. And we have staff that have been helping as well, but it's really the experts that do this 2-day workshop, and it's meant to be visionary.
I'm sorry, it's 2 days, not just the 1 day?
The overall workshop, just the stakeholder thing is a 45-minute commitment.
Will it be video?
The presentation, I would imagine so. I will ask though. Hopefully. That would be great, yeah. And we should also get like a final report that we can communicate out as well. So.
You think you can do it, Derek?
I should be able to. I have to go through the process of.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Adjourned. Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned, and we will see you at the study session, hopefully somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks.
Good.